In the late 80s and early 90s, Lester Levenson urged us to get serious about releasing because we would soon be put to the test. Now, why would this spiritual master advise us to prepare for the apocalypse? Well, if you've been paying attention to what's been going on in the world lately, I'm sure you can guess why. But what did Lester really mean? And how can we use his teachings to deal with the craziness in the world today and come out on top? That's what we're going to take a deep dive into today, coming up. Welcome to the Power of Quiet, showing you that no matter who you are, and no matter what your circumstances are in life, you have a power inside of you, a power that we simply call beingness. And when you identify with your beingness, like I said, no matter who you are, you immediately have the ability to have, do, and be whatever you choose. And this is something that's provable. And what we show you here is just simple, actionable steps that you could take to prove this all out for yourself. So if that's something that you're interested in and you're new here, then hit subscribe and welcome aboard. Now, as many of you know, the foundation of the work that we do here comes from a very special and unique spiritual master by the name of Lester Levenson. And what makes him so unique is, unlike basically every other master, if you ever listened to them or read their works, they typically tend to talk in riddles or metaphors, which in one sense is kind of necessary because we're talking about something that the mind can never grasp. So they talk about it in a way that you kind of have to let go of the mind and kind of move in a direction to experience for yourself. So that's cool. But Lester is a little bit different than that. Lester found a way to just really give it to you straight. And he just told you in no uncertain terms exactly who you are and what you're all about. He just told it like it is. And it's a pretty refreshing way to talk about this subject of greater spirituality and inner truth. So it's pretty cool. And when I got into this method nearly 20 years ago, I had the fortunate ability to go out to Sedona and archive Lester's works, all of his recordings, because he went free back in the 50s and he transcended, he left in the 90s. So across that 40 years, he recorded himself, and also when he was talking with graduates, with groups that he was teaching his method to, they were recording them. And there were hundreds and hundreds of hours of these recordings. And it's great to have this archive. But this archive was on old reel-to-reel tapes. So another graduate and we made like 4 trips out to Sedona, where these old tapes were just sitting in an attic, rotting away, with the mission to archive them digitally, to preserve them. And we had to go to eBay and get these old reel-to-reel machines, and we had to get Tascam digital recorders and computers to record them into. But we set up this system where we had like four recording stations set up, and we were just going through these reels one after another. As soon as one finished, we put another one on. And it was fortunate because a lot of these reels, all of these tapes, as we were running them through the machine, they were literally disintegrating as they were going through the machine. Like we had one shot. But we got them all. Hundreds of hours of these talks from Lester. And just a little side note. I remember sitting back, listening to Lester ×4 for hours upon hours, getting all these recordings in. Just sometimes like listening to one of them, but sometimes just kind of listening to a field of 4 different talks happening all at once. But just getting blissed out by that whole experience. It's pretty incredible. Now, one of the things that struck me as I was listening to all these talks from Lester was that again and again, he kept bringing up that we need to pay attention because within a relatively short time frame, there's going to be a big cataclysm happening in the world. Whether that was war or some big natural disaster, he said it was coming. And he mentioned it again and again. And he would bring it up in conversations like one of the graduates in the group would talk about an experience that they had with fire walking. And he would say, oh, yeah, well, that's a good skill to have. Because in a decade or so, you will probably need to use that to walk across lava. Also, he had set up the whole Sedona Retreat Center as a safe haven for graduates where they could buy and own their own casita there on the retreat grounds so that when the S hit the fan, they could all go there. It was off the grid. It was self-sufficient. And they could just hang out and release while the rest of the world tore itself apart. Now, that was the whole purpose of the Sedona Retreat Center. Now, when I listened to Lester bring up again and again that before long there's going to be a huge upheaval in the world, to be honest, that bothered me. Because here I found this great method where life can be harmonious and abundant, and I can just have lots of abundance in my life. But I don't want to get a place where I could finally have abundance and then the world falls apart. That's no fun. So when he talked about that, a lot of times I kind of tuned it out. I don't want to hear that. And then also I tried to, in some instances, try to calculate, well, when was he talking about it? He said it was going to happen in like the next decade or so. Maybe it was like in the somewhere in the 2000s it was supposed to happen. And, well, we got past that. So maybe, cross my fingers, Lester's wrong. Or, you know, we did something to prevent that. Well, looking around nowadays, it seems maybe this is kind of what Lester is hinting at. Or something sort of like it. Now, to be fair, we're not exactly walking on lava right now, but things are pretty crazy. And people are acting pretty crazy, and who knows? In a couple instances, we're like a stone's throw away from having some big wars break out. So we might need those skills to walk across lava. Which brings me to, why did Lester bring this up? Was it as a warning? No. 2 main points come to mind as to why Lester stressed this again and again. And one, it's a phenomena that you can see already happening right now. And see, what Lester was really wanting us to do is take responsibility and get really good at releasing, so that when the world started going crazy, that we didn't go crazy with it. That we had enough of our ego released so we didn't get swept away by that ego. Now, looking around, unfortunately. Not only with the releasing community, but the spiritual community overall. It's like the whole community just pivoted 180 degrees from what they used to talk about. See, like 5-10 years ago, everybody's about peace, joy, harmony, love, unconditional love, love thy neighbor. They're talking about, the body is just a projection of the mind, and you don't need to go to the hospital and all that stuff. You could take care of yourself naturally, and there's all sorts of natural ways to thrive in your body and all that. They're not talking that way now. They went in the complete opposite direction, a lot of those people. In fact, it's really funny. There's a comedian named J.P. Sears that did a whole bit about this, about spiritual people, now versus then. How, he goes through all these things, all these talking points, the way they used to talk then versus the way they talk now. Then it was all about unconditional love. We're all the same. But now, the exact same people are all about differences and how I hate those people. Literally saying how they wish those people would die. Crazy. And spewing hate about this politician and this other public figure, and on and on and on. They just turned around and went the direction of separation, literally. And all the other stuff. Just literally threw all those teachings in the trash. And I see why Lester urged us to release and get good at releasing. Because he knew how strong the ego is. And if we're not strong, and we don't use adversity to amplify our strength, and use problems to propel ourselves moving forward in the direction that we're supposed to move in, that we just fall all over ourselves. There's a quote, I think it came from a book, that said, hard times create strong men, and strong men create good times, and good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times, and it just turns into this cycle. And I could see how back maybe 10 years ago, well, maybe even before then, when things were really good, there weren't a whole lot of problems, a whole lot to really be distressed about. It's easy to be spiritual. It's easy to be there and go, oh yeah, and love this and peace that. But when things do get hard, what happens if we're not developing that strength in our practice? We go in the opposite direction. Our ego takes over. So that was one of Lester's major points, was to take that responsibility. Do the work. Don't wait. Don't put it off. Don't procrastinate. Get good at it. Now, unfortunately, I've seen even people who have been committed to doing Lester's work, this pure, simple method. Even some people who teach Lester's work just go off on the deep end. Like I remember when the George Floyd protests were happening back in 2020, in that summer of love, that I saw one particular teacher advertise a class that they were doing on, the class is about white privilege. Let's release on white privilege. And another person who used to teach Lester's work went on this lecturing rant about how no matter what you say, no matter who you are, you're racist. And you need to own up to that racism inside of you. Now, of course, if you got racism inside of you, you got to let that go. But what Lester's about, and really any spiritual master, they're not about probing the dark. They're always just pointing towards the light. Like Eckhart Tolle. He's always just pointing towards what he calls portals. Portals into a greater consciousness, whether it's stillness or the now, and other masters like Amma. She doesn't go on about you need to identify this nasty aspect about you and wallow in it. She doesn't even point out that stuff. She just points out what truth is. And there's a reason why these masters just point towards the light. Or as Lester puts it, hold in mind what it is that you want, not what you don't want. Because the mind, it's a creative instrument, and it only deals in pictures. So like if I say to you, don't fall down, what do you get a picture of? Falling down. The mind doesn't process the words not or don't. It just goes right to the picture. So if you focus on like, well, what do I want to get rid of? Let's end racism. I'm against racism. Well, what are you holding in mind? If I say, don't be racist, what comes to your mind? Racism. And a lot of people are very susceptible and very suggestive. So you can literally program people to be the thing that you're telling them not to be. And you could see this phenomena show up. The more people are against something, it just seems to grow. The more people protest, the more the problem persists. So that's why these great masters, they don't go probe in the dark. Just look towards the light. And especially in Lester's teachings, it's not about playing Dr. Phil with somebody. So for somebody to tell somebody what's wrong with them, it's like playing God with somebody. And like I said, people are often suggestive. So you can literally program somebody to go, oh yeah, it must be racist, when they probably weren't even in that boat. But now you just kind of put that seed in them, so wow, congratulations. Now, the other reason why Lester stressed this end of the world scenario to the graduates was as a second step to take responsibility and get good at releasing so you don't get swept away by the ego and a bunch of nonsense, is that when the world does get difficult, that you don't make that a bad thing, that you don't freak out, and that you don't go, oh, things are getting bad, I want to get away from this. And instead of trying to escape all the problems, you see, someone who is really serious about the path and serious about freedom, when there is difficulty, that one leans towards the difficulty. Because hard times make for the greatest opportunity for growth. When life gets hard, if you use it, that has the force to catapult you big time towards freedom. And that's another thing that Lester said, is use every down as an up. So that's really what I want to focus on here in this video, is to bring us back into Lester's teachings and the purpose of why we are here, and give us a boost so that we can make the most out of this situation and use all this craziness that's going on as a way for all of us to move to this place of being truly loving, truly imperturbable, and to recognize in this process that when we get imperturbable internally, that protects us from anything that could possibly happen. Because, like I said, Lester liked to just tell it straight. He didn't mince words about how powerful we are. He said that they could detonate an atom bomb right under your nose. And if you're imperturbable, it wouldn't even touch you, your body or anything. You're that powerful. And that body is your creation. And it is provable. And let's take some steps to prove that right now. Just take a look at something that's bothering you about what's going on in the world today. Whether it is something that's going on politically, whether it's something that you're worried about happening to you in your body and your health, or just anything that's really disturbing you. Maybe you're worried about your finances, worried about what's going to happen to the economics in the world. Maybe you're longing for things to go back to the way they used to be. You don't want a new normal. You don't want some sort of great reset. You want to change what's happening. So what's bothering you about what's going on in the world today? And first of all, as you're thinking about this, see, from the neck up, all that mind is, that thinking part of your head, most of us, we think we have to live with that voice that talks to us constantly. It doesn't shut up. But we think we have to live with it. But where'd that voice come from? That voice in our head, our mind. Did our parents give it to us? Did God give it to us? It's our voice, right? That sound in your head, that's your voice. And only you are hearing it. And it's your voice. Maybe you put that in there. And if you created that thing, how silly is it for you to have to be stuck listening to it, letting it boss you around? But that's what it does, right? It's a very negative thing. Rarely does it say something nice, but it's always worried about this and hating on that and wanting to change that and dissatisfied about that. And it won't shut up, does it? And every great master all points in the same direction, for you to quiet that mind. It's when that mind is quiet that you really see who you are beyond that thing. And you don't have to listen to that. But what we're doing right now, right? See, as you're thinking about what it is that you don't like in the world today, from the neck up, it's just noise. And it's all negative. Let's not mess with that. That's probing the darkness. But what we can do is kind of get away from that and get to a place where we could release the darkness. Just release that negativity. And we don't need to know what that is. We don't need to identify with it. Oh, it's this personal problem, or it's racism, whatever. It's just negativity. Negativity is negativity. And you can let it go very easily, and it's just gone. And that's the greatest thing to experience on this path, is you don't need to go rummaging through all this garbage. You just let it go and instantly recognize that loving, positive being that you are. And all that other stuff is just false. You just recognize it, you just drop it. All right? So, where you can release this negativity is in this area here, your feeling center. So, one more time, just think about what it is that you don't like about the world today. And put your head down towards your stomach or chest, this area here. Close your eyes. And as you're thinking about what's wrong in the world, notice what you're feeling in your stomach and chest area. You might notice kind of a twisting, clenching, gripping, tight feeling. Notice something like that? Kind of just like a contraction. And wherever it is that you feel that, might be like right over your heart, or it might be up in your throat. Just somewhere around there. It's kind of like a big knot of energy, all clenched up. Now what I want you to do is just open up an imaginary window or door. Wherever you feel that energy, wherever that is, just open up a door right in front of it. And just imagine that as energy now. And imagine that energy moving out that door. And imagine it moving out that door even more. And even more. And even more. And even more. And it's just energy passing through. It's not good. It's not bad. It's just energy. Just let it leave out that door. And let it leave a little bit more. And a little bit more. All right? Notice how you feel. Just notice if you feel a little bit lighter. Notice a difference. That's how easy it is to let go. And see if you're as bothered now as you were a few moments ago. When you think about the situation in the world. See if you feel a little bit more above it, a little bit more imperturbable about it. And this is the first step to moving towards a more powerful place. Now let's take another step. I want to show you just how your mind has been talking to you. Notice how it's been complaining about that situation in the world and trying to figure out what to do about it. And it's trying to find an answer everywhere. So it's like, go listen to this expert, or go listen to this podcast, or go read the news. Try to get informed. Right? Maybe, if you know what's supposed to be the truth, then that'll liberate you. But that mind has you looking for an answer to get out of this situation. Or you're just wondering, when's it going to end? And notice, you're not getting an answer, are you? And that mind is just dragging you over here and over there, but you're never really getting anywhere. Shows you how useful that mind is. But notice this now. On top of this, the way that your mind is talking to you, it's telling you to beat yourself up, or beat the other one up, or disapprove of what's happening. Isn't it? Oh, I don't like this. I can't stand that person. I wish they would just drop dead. Maybe you don't want to admit it, but part of you feels that way, right? And that's how your mind is talking to you. It's telling you to disapprove of what's going on. Now, if you're disapproving of what's going on, you're contributing to the negativity. It's like throwing a log on the fire. You've got something like a pocket of negativity that's going on around you in the world, and you're just throwing more logs on that fire. How do you expect to create something positive by being negative, by disapproving of what's going on? But aren't you doing it? Be honest. And can you see that it really doesn't help you to disapprove of what's going on? That's not giving you a solution, right? And who's doing that? Who's disapproving of the situation? You are, aren't you? And if you're doing it, and it's not getting you a solution, it's just miring you and more negativity, and you're doing it, maybe it's a good idea to go in a different direction, do something different. So let me ask you this. Would you rather be negative and just add to the hate that's going on? Or would you rather be positive and just be loving despite what's going on? You already see what happens when you go in that direction. You got a whole life load of experiences to prove that point. Why not go in a positive direction now? And you probably have some experiences that you can relate to, that where you know positive is the right way to go. That being loving unconditionally, just like every great master talks about, that's the right answer. So what do you decide? Do you decide to be positive and loving, or negative and disapproving? Well, I'm assuming you're deciding to be positive. So let's take the next step. Since it's your decision, you're the one who's doing it, you've been hating on what's going on, could you let go of hating on it a little bit? Just a little bit. It's your choice. It really is your decision. And it's simple. There's nothing complicated about this. It's just a yes or no thing. Could you let go of hating what's going on? Just a little bit. And could you let go of disapproving of it a little bit more? And could you let go of disapproving of it a little bit more? And a little bit more. And could you let go of disapproving of it even more? And even more. And more. And a little bit more. And could you let go of disapproving of it even more? And even more. And how does that feel? A little bit lighter, right? Now, could you give it a little bit of approval? Just because. Just because positive doesn't hurt anything. Could you just like it a little bit? And again, it's not complicated. It doesn't take any sort of mental gymnastics. It's very direct. Could you like it a little bit? Just like it. It's your choice, yes or no. And could you like it a little bit more? And a little bit more. And a little bit more. And a little bit more. And how does that feel? Now take a look to see who you're disapproving of in the world right now. Maybe it's a political figure. Maybe it's a relative of yours that has a different viewpoint than you do, sees the things differently. And of course, they're wrong. So who are you disapproving of? And what do you expect to accomplish by disapproving of them? Are you going to get any sort of resolution out of that? Or you get to be right, they get to be right, and you just both go in opposite directions? That's no way to live. And most of us are waiting for the other person to do it. No, you be loving first. You change first. No, take it upon yourself right now. And don't do it for them, do it for you. Because if you're disapproving of them, who gets to walk around with that disapproval? You do. And again, like I pointed out earlier, the mind is a creative instrument. And it only deals in pictures. And you know, there's a meme, a joke about, it's obvious how all those people that are hating on Donald Trump is living rent-free in their mind. They're carrying him around with them wherever they go. And even though they don't want to admit it, they can't wait for him to come back. So they can criticize him, they can gossip, they can talk about him, and on and on and on. But why carry around that negativity with you? Like they say, holding a grudge against somebody, it's like taking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So, could you let go of disapproving of this person that, you just love to hate? Could you? And could you let go of disapproving of them some more? And more. And even 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 more. And how's that feel? Isn't that a load off of your back, not having to carry that negativity around with you? And you were doing it all along. Now, could you give this person some approval? Now, it doesn't mean that you have to agree with them. Doesn't mean that you have to support or condone what they're doing. That's a whole different issue. But it doesn't mean that you have to hate on them, because that doesn't solve anything. So could you just give them a little bit of approval? Just a little bit, not too much. And could you love them a little bit more? Just a little bit. And a little bit more. And even more. And even more. And even more. And how does that feel? And take a look to see if this person can bother you. Maybe a little bit, but not as much as before, right? And in the same sense, see if this person has as much power over you as they seem to have before. You see, just by releasing your feelings about somebody or some situation, it moves you up. It moves you into a more powerful place. And it feels nice and light and refreshing, doesn't it? Don't you feel more light and positive now? And what is that? Well, I say that is the real you. That's your beingness that you're starting to experience, that lighter feeling. That's the real you that's now showing up. Now let's take one more step here to really get a good sense of what we need to do in the situation right now. Is take a look to see what it is that you're wanting to control in the world right now, or wanting to change. And again, notice what you're picturing in your mind. The mind only deals in pictures. When you're wanting to change or control something, what are you picturing? Are you really picturing the solution, the light, or are you just picturing the problem, the darkness? And since the mind is creative, if that's what you're holding in mind, it's no wonder why it's not changing. All right, now, could you let go of wanting to change it a little bit? Because what we're experiencing now is that want is lack. As long as you want something, you're actually lacking it. So let go of wanting it. You can't want and have at the same time. They're opposites. If you want to be in control, you can't want control. Could you let go of wanting control a little bit? Just a little bit. See, prove it out. Could you let go of wanting to control what's going on in the world? And a little bit more. And even more. And even more. And let go of wanting to control it a little bit more. And more. And even more. And even more. And could you let go of wanting to control it even more? Again, it's just a simple decision, yes or no. And could you let go of wanting to control it even more? And even more. And how does that feel? Just notice this. Does it feel like you're in more control than you were a few moments ago? Maybe it's just a more sense of confidence, a more sense of clarity. Maybe you don't have an answer specifically, but it's just feeling a little bit more in control, more relaxed. Showing you, proving that when you let go of that want, you fall right into having. And that's the whole secret to abundance right there. And you could have it in your life, no matter what the rest of the world does. You could have it your way. Now, one last thing. Now that you opened up your chest, you let go of that energy, bring your attention back there. And just open up that door. Even if you don't feel much of a contraction, just open up an imaginary door right there anyway. And just invite up any energy, any tightness or tension, just let it go out the door. And also, you've been giving yourself approval, giving the world approval. Give yourself approval. And give yourself a little bit more approval. It's just a decision to like yourself, despite what's going on, despite whatever poor me story that your mind has been telling you. Oh, my business has been suffering. I can't travel where I want. I'm worried about this. You just give yourself approval now. That's all. And just keep that door open. And just love yourself a little bit more. A little bit more. And notice, as you have that door open, and as you're just taking small steps and loving yourself, notice how quiet your mind has gotten. Isn't it quieter now? And notice the quiet that's all around you. There might be noise happening, but there's also a field of quiet here. Pay attention to that. And that quiet around you is the same quiet that's within you. Now, just surrender to that quiet. All you have to do is just look at it. And let yourself surrender even more to the quiet. And even more. And even more. And notice, this quiet is not a dead space. It's not an empty space. It's very alive. And it's very spontaneous. And you could even ask quiet questions and get very spontaneous answers. Let's just ask a couple simple questions to quiet. Ask quiet if there's any such thing as the past. Just take what you get according to quiet. And ask quiet if there's any such thing as the future. Just take what you get. What does quiet tell you? Ask quiet if there's any such thing as good or bad. What's quiet's perspective about that? Now surrender to quiet even more. And notice, quiet is all positive, all loving, and has answers for everything. And the quiet, that's you. And wouldn't it be nice to hang out in quiet all the time? And not be bothered by all this stuff and not be affected by any of it. You can live in quiet all the time. But you got to take responsibility. If you're ready to step up and take responsibility, I invite you to join me for an upcoming course that's all about uncovering the real you. It's called Living Your True Purpose. It's a new 6-week course we're doing live. And there's a lot to it. We're going to go deep into showing you how to walk down that path to freedom and get there. Not just get part of the way, get all the way. So that you can be as much of a master as Lester and as any other master. You're no different. And it really takes no time for you to realize that yourself. But again, you got to take responsibility. So join me. I'll put a link to the class up here and also in the comments below. But before we conclude, just enjoy the quiet. And I'll see you on the next video.